Enterprise, creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and research and sources of opportunity. Professor Michael Brennan. I don't know if Vanessa joins. Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to pick up on some slides from the presentation that I was doing earlier before Louis did his session. And I've just heard that this person, Max Neef, it's actually, Catalina was saying he passed away last month. So he was a very important thinker and challenger of assumptions about how development takes place right across the world, in the first world as well as other worlds. So as I said, one of the things from this morning was to try and share with you the idea that problems can be looked at from multiple perspectives. And just to finish off a couple of other points about that, as I said, TD research or transdisciplinary research is not instead of traditional science. It's in addition to it. So traditional science is the driving point for the production of new knowledge and the quality of knowledge. But TD is a way of adding to that to try and bring together things that are in addition to that. So that's a very important point to make. I'm not suggesting some radical new way in which the world addresses knowledge. But so TD, so it's a comprehensive, multi-perspective, problem, solution-oriented approach. And I think the problems, starting with the problem is the key issue, as I said earlier, and tries to transgress boundaries between scientific disciplines and between science and practice. So that's really what we're in the business of doing, and hopefully that's coming out this morning. As I said, one of the things that I've noticed is that different types of knowledge, and certainly in the academic literature about knowledge production, it's a recognition that there are multiple types of knowledge. Most people in the room will be in this area where it's explicit, scientific, generalized, and formal knowledge. But the other side of it is that it's the equal validity of these types of knowledge. I'll give you an example. When I was much younger, I worked as an archaeologist. It was my first job in Ireland, and my speciality was the Neolithic, European Neolithic. So does anybody know when the Neolithic was? How many years ago? 5,000 to 7,000. Correct. So it's 5,000 years ago is the European Neolithic. And my job was to go and map the landscape in an area of Ireland which had lots of monuments, ancient monuments on it. So like a good scientist, as an archaeologist, I looked at the evidence on maps. I looked at books and surveys and things like that. I looked at scientific publications, generalized knowledge, formal knowledge that existed, and then I went out into the field and started to record the monuments that I saw. And I met a farmer in a field in County Antrim, and I said, I'm looking for monuments or artifacts or buildings to record for this survey before a mining company dug up the land, actually. And I said, here's all my map of the monuments. And I said, you know any other ones? He said, yeah, you're standing on a monument. I said, no, it's an empty field. He said, no, I said, how do you know? He said, because when I'm plowing the land, every so often I come up with pottery and stones and things like that. So it's well known in this locality, on this farm, that other monuments exist. So that was an example to me that wasn't captured anywhere. No one was aware of it, despite the fact that where we live in Ireland had a long history of cartography and mapping and surveys and things like that. So that was informal knowledge from a farmer on his land. It was context specific. He knew exactly what was happening in his farm. It was experiential. He found it at different periods of time over the years. And it was tacit knowledge. It wasn't explicit in any way. So that is an example to me, a simple example of how there are different knowledge types. And a scientist, whilst that's a very powerful paradigm, this is equally valid. And in fact, when you try to extend that to people with the challenge of safe water, it's this tacit knowledge, experiential knowledge, context-specific knowledge, and informal knowledge, which I think this interplay between the different types of knowledge is very powerful. And that's where, for scientists to go into that, whilst it mightn't be easy or straightforward, it is important, I think. Any observations on that? The importance of tacit, experiential, context-specific, and informal knowledge? Any experiences of that? Anybody?
I think that this part of the graph, it's, since we are talking about bottom-up knowledge, it's feeding the scientific and this other part of the graph. So we are talking about getting all of this information and situations and getting to this other part, fitting with knowledge and experiments and information from other parts of other locals.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important. So it's that interplay between scientific and experiential knowledge, which is actually the innovation that takes place, I think.
Years ago, we had a project about restoration of boulders in the river. So we do a strategic of restoration with a variety of trees. And when we went to the field to plant these trees, we have low results. Talking with the community, they know about a specific trees that it was a resistant trees in these river conditions.
Yes.
So it's like an informal knowledge that origin. This origin is the knowledge of community.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And as I said, I mean, that's anecdotal evidence, but the UN report for water development that came out in 2018 was focused on nature-based solutions. And it was suggesting in that report, it was quite a critical report, it was suggesting that scientific and engineering solutions that are imposed on communities are often counterproductive and actually make the problem worse. My scientific friends are raising their eyes again. So it's the idea that it's this interplay between the different types of knowledge, and I think that's the recognition. If one accepts that point, then that's a lesson from the session. As I said, TD, or transdisciplinary knowledge, augments traditional and powerful ways of generating knowledge in different scientific disciplines. But as the process is still developing, it's very popular, or gaining in popularity in Europe at the moment, especially in places like Switzerland, Germany, Scandinavian countries, and increasingly in the UK. And what it does, it tries to categorize knowledge in different ways. So this idea about three types of knowledge that are interdependent: systems knowledge, target knowledge, transformational knowledge, is a dominant way of organizing knowledge in transdisciplinary research. And one of the things I've noticed is the exercise you've just completed is that the exercise, the mental exercise that you spent 10 or 15 minutes completing before the break was an exercise in doing systems knowledge, target knowledge, and transformation knowledge, where the systems knowledge is trying to understand how the problem is structured and could develop and how it's perceived by those concerned. So the perception of stakeholders is, what is the problem? Is it dirty water, or is it lack of access to water? Often, it struck me, some of the presentations over the last number of years from colleagues was that it's not lack of water, there's plenty of water in countries, it's access to it is often the issue. The target knowledge is the norms and values in relation to desired goals, making them clear and deliberate, and solving conflicting values using common goods such as sustainable development. And that's where any target knowledge has to be something that will actually is achievable and agreed by the partners in the group. And we've had real difficulty in that. I mean, Paddy will say, if he's here, that we've argued quite a lot in Ulster about, what is target knowledge, what is, is social knowledge as legitimate as scientific knowledge, and so on. So we've had very heated debates about that because it challenges traditional norms of quality in science, and that's not to be underestimated. That's the foundation of a lot of civilization, I would say. Transformational knowledge is about technical, cultural, social, legal, and other ways of achieving the desired outcome. So from this side, this idea is that it's 3 types of knowledge in TD research which are mutually independent and involve scientists and people from society working together to try and work out what it is they're trying to do, and that's not a trivial task. Any thoughts on that typology of knowledge? Okay, so as I said earlier on, I'm highlighting this so you're aware there's a different, most people in the room are from a particular discipline, and what's now emerging is this thing that is beyond disciplines. It's transdisciplinary, and just to be aware, this is happening, and more importantly, funders, people who are paying money for us to do research, are aware of this. I got this from GCRF. They sent it to me to say this is important for us, and this is how we're going to start to evaluate your success. So it is important stuff. As a process, what I've been doing over the last year is trying to go through this process of problem identification and structuring, bringing the results to fruition, and problem analysis. So it's actually, there's an increasing literature which explains this as a process. So again, if you're a PhD student and you're in a discipline, trying to add this sort of approach to what you're doing is an innovation, and certainly your peers will be intrigued and stimulated and impressed, I think, by taking this stuff into account. Final slide in this bit is this idea that it's not scientific research first, and then as an afterthought, you try to convince people to take on board your scientific developments, as they go in tandem. So this circular process, we have scientific problems like that, and also you have this process of societal problems. And this is the basic orientating philosophy about how TD takes place. And given that GCRF gave us the money on the basis that we were going to develop a TD approach, this is what they're expecting us to be aware of and to engage our activities with. Even if you're a scientist and you're very clear in your mind about what it is you're doing, this is the business that we're in. This is beyond your scientific output. It's that we have to demonstrate societal impact, and certainly that's what our funders are demanding that we actually demonstrate. So it's not a trivial add-on. So we've actually, as a good academic, sort of getting publications on this, and this is one that came out this year in World Development, a high impact journal, and it's about TD research, exploring impact, knowledge and quality in the early stages of our project. So as a tangible outcome from this is that given that you're aware now that our funders are expecting us to engage with this because they want impact, not for their own sake, they want us to have impact, we now have a capability and a recognized expertise, I guess, in this area, that in your research, every single person in our group who's doing research in this area, we have this resource or dimension to our work that you can, that is to be encouraged, that we work with you or you ask us what contributions we can make, and we need to demonstrate that we're doing that. So that's a very important part of this whole process. So it's not that you work in your silo, this idea of working by yourself on an island or a silo. It's that you genuinely collaborate with colleagues in the group, which is a difficult and challenging thing. So any thoughts on TD? I know there are people sitting here who would say, I'm not interested in that. That just sounds difficult to me. But we're expected to do it as part of our project. So any thoughts or observations on that? Vanessa, have you any thoughts on TD?
I think sometimes people are disconnected from the methodology that is being presented because they don't understand exactly how this is relevant for their work. So it is very important to point out, as Mike was saying, that basically as an academic, you need to be sourcing, trying to leverage money at all time. And the funders now are more aware that we actually need to be providing real solutions to the society, and that cannot be achieved if you don't have a methodology that you are integrating not only different areas, but you are all the time trying to reassess what the problem is. So that is one point. Another point it is, even if you're trying to focus even only on your specific area, so in SafeWater we divide that by work packets, for instance. So you have a work package that is dedicated to developing technologies and the prototypes. Even that, you need to be aware of TD, because for instance, if you go back to this one, yeah, and you are talking about it's not a top-down or a bottom-up approach. You have the problems that the end users have, for instance, and you have the scientific knowledge that the academia wants to produce, and you have to try to meet like halfway and then adapt and go in circles all the time. So it's basically understanding that there is not only one pathway, that it is a circular all the time. So that is why it's just two reasons why TG is important.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So any other observations from colleagues about this idea of TD?
I think I find it interesting. I wouldn't say I know more than a small amount about it, but I'm keen to find out more, you know.
Yeah. Well, the first step is to read my article.
That's funny enough what I'm going to do as soon as I get a moment.
It took me 7 months to do that.
Will it take 7 months to read?
No, about six.
Okay.
No, it's the idea. I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, most scientists and engineers here will say, look, it's an interesting thing for funders. It sounds good. It's a wee bit different. It's creative. But I'm not interested in it. But what I'm saying to you is that it will add to your science and your engineering if you can engage with this discourse across societal issues and scientific issues. But it is difficult. When we got the money, when we addressed the panel in London, one of the panelists said, this is difficult stuff to do. You know, it's not an easy thing. You'll get a lot of resistance from your scientific and engineering colleagues, which I have had, but it is important. So I'm just flagging it up as something that you're to be aware of, and if you're happy about it or interested, then we can work together on that.
I also think that if you, by the end of the day, the morning, you say, no, not interested at all, it's not for me, I think it is still important for you to think on your own personal development. So TD actually helps you to see the big picture instead trying to work within your area. And if you are trying to climb the ladder for development and try to get to management positions, senior management positions, you actually need to understand the whole context within TD to be able to do that and deliver your job. And if you're comfortable in the position you are, it's important simply for you to be able to do your work, do your reports, understand how your colleagues works. So I think you have to look from a personal development perspective as well.
Okay, thanks for that. As I said, these slides will be available. I don't want to labour the point, but just to give you a flavour of the issues that I've got in the article. I mean, what I've done is do a deconstructing problem elements. So this is a classic way of deconstructing problems into what, why, when, where, who, how, and with. Do you know who invented that typology? the way of breaking down any circumstances into 7 components. There were, yeah, so that was, what do you call the guy? Thing. Well, that was Rudyard Kipling did a poem about that. He actually nicked it from Aristotle. Aristotle did this, what was it, 300 BC? Again, archaeology. 300 BC about how you can deconstruct any circumstances into 7 elements. And it's this sort of getting back to basics in TD, which is very appealing, I think. And it's, we try to deconstruct this into contextual elements. Why is it who says it's a problem? Why is it a problem? Where is it a problem? And then how, with what technology? So we've spent a bit of time going through that. We did our framework. It's quite complicated. It's about different elements, explaining what it is, the literature that goes with that. Again, if you're a PhD student and you're interested in some of this stuff, there's a lot of very interesting writers from different dimensions looking at this stuff. So you have this stuff from Techno-Scientific Knowledge from Giles in Research Policy, which is a very prominent journal in the world about innovation. So that's some stuff we've done. And then we've tried to look at things like alternative epistemologies. So if you're doing a PhD, again, this is what you'll be doing. The epistemology of possession and the epistemology of practice. So that's for the people who are interested in this. But I'm just demonstrating to you that there's a lot of stuff in this that is can be of use. You're not expected to do it, but if you are, be aware that a number of us in the team have now an expertise in this area. So next steps in terms of your research. What we're expected to do by GCRF is to collaborate. And the easiest thing in the world is for you as a scientist or engineer to work in your silo, to do your stuff and ignore everybody else. That's not good enough, to be frank. We need to demonstrate integration by working with 1 or 2 other people and trying to come up with things that go beyond the limitations of what we're doing. A really important thing, and Vanessa will be talking about this in the future, no doubt, is to demonstrate impact to the funders in relating to what we're doing. And I think Patty mentioned this yesterday, it's a given that we're researching SDG 6, Sustainable Development Goal 6, which is about the water challenge, but that's only one of 5 criteria that the funders are using to evaluate what we've done, and there are other ones. So capability building. So Patty has emphasized that it's the capacity and capability of each person in the team. We have to demonstrate that we've done that, and it seems to me that it's like almost like an add-on, an afterthought to the water challenge. It's the capacity to solve problems is really what we're interested in, as well as water. It's equitable partnerships. It's not a university from the UK trying to dictate things to do with colleagues across the world. I mean, the idea of developing I don't really recognize the idea of developing countries. I get the idea. I would say it's sustaining countries, because back in Ireland and the UK, the water challenge is as acute there as it is in Brazil or Colombia or Mexico. There are major water challenges in Ireland, for example, about bringing water from the largest river, the River Shannon in the west of the country, to Dublin, because there's going to be water shortages in the next number of years. London has got had water shortages, has done very well to improve those. So it's about equitable partnerships and sustainability wherever you are in the world. I think that's the point. It's about the water challenge. It's about interdisciplinarity, and what we've suggested in our project is that we're going beyond that to TD, transdisciplinarity, to demonstrate that we're being innovative and doing things differently. And also our global networks, of which this is an exercise and demonstration of that. So to summarize to you, when we're being evaluated, Vanessa, the people who are evaluating the project at the end will be asking you, each one of us, what have you done for these things? And if you just say, well, I came up with something about the water thing, that's not enough. You'll be asked, what else did you do? And that's what we have to report back to our funders and the people that are interested in our work. So it's not just water, it's these 5 areas. So any questions about that?
Just a comment that when your supervisors or when Vanessa asks for information, it's not that we are not placing importance on the technology. It's not that we're ignoring the prototypes or the results. It's that it's only one element of everything that we have to report upon. And each one of these elements is equal. We have to report as much about capacity, global networks, interdisciplinary, as we report about the work, the technology. So when we rewrite these big reports, please don't feel that your research is not important or not being included. It's one element and only one element. So we circulate emails a lot and ask for you to report about conferences you've attended, courses you've attended, and all of this other information, because we have to collect this. Okay, it's very important that you don't get the impression that when we ask for reports, we don't care about your work. That's absolutely not true. We very much care about the research work, the development work on all aspects of the project. But the funders ask us, just like Mike has on the screen, and the technology, the sciencey bit, or social sciencey bit, is just one small element of what we have to ask for. And I know it's difficult because you receive a lot of emails. Please fill out this, please fill out that, do this survey. But it's very important that we capture this information now, because it's impossible at the end to go back and try and make up all of these stories about this information. So it's just a plea to please bear with us as we collect this information to put together this narrative about the project. The ultimate aim is to get more funding. So if we can demonstrate we do all this, it increases our chances of being able to get more money for PhD students to have postdocs, for staff to have more research, to develop new collaborations. And that's ultimately what we want from the project, not just to come to the end and stop, but to be able to have many more projects that spin out from the end.
Okay, Paddy, I think the objective is to get more funding to solve problems in society. I mean, that's the ultimate version of this. So just for people doing PhDs, for researchers on our group, for colleagues from the university, I think one of the broader issue is that what we've noticed in the UK and the wider issue in Europe is that these are consistent questions that we're being demanded of, and certainly in our university at Ulster we're being pressurised to get more research income and to demonstrate we've engaged more with people outside. So all of us in the room, if we're in the business of academia or as an NGO working with a societal problem, these are the things we need to demonstrate to our funders. So any last observations or questions about that? Okay, so TD is important. You might want to engage Brain with some aspects of it. We've got a resource here that we're more than willing and quite happy and keen to work with you in ways that can make it easy for you to augment the valuable research that you're already doing. So thanks for that. I think what we're going to do now is I was going to ask Louise. Louise did an exercise. I was quite interested in that as an exercise in TD. You know, it was this idea about systems knowledge, target knowledge, and transformation. Do you want any feedback from the group about what they felt, or do you want to do that now, or do you want to leave that till later? What did you think about the exercise of doing that? You were asked to do reverse innovation, so a solution and activities. That's the practice of doing this. So what did you learn from that exercise? Yeah, go.
Don't want to be hogging the microphone. I enjoyed the exercise. I'm not sure I was doing it right. but it felt like something that was worth doing, and I don't know, I could have quite happily worked at it for longer.
Right.
So,
Well, that's a positive.
Liked it.
That's
Yeah,
a positive.
I thought so.
Yeah. Any other comments about it? The exercise?
I thought it was extremely valuable because I'm quite used to these approaches and different methodologies, and that one challenged me to go outside of my comfort zone and try to think in a different way, because usually we are used to use, I don't know, theory of change or log frames or TD to try to come up with a solution to a problem, or even creative problem solving. But I think what was very challenging for me was trying to get off the mindset of, okay, we are working from the challenge down, or we are working from the initiative up. We are actually going all directions, and is exactly what Mike taught us this morning. So it was very useful.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you for that. Any other comments about the process of doing it?
You know, for me, it was like taking a picture from all the angles, and it's very useful because from all angles you learn, and also you listen very much others, because for me this is very complex. Took me quite a lot to understand, and when you understand, you're automatically changing the way you're thinking, and that's constructive, and that gives you like another scaffold of thoughts, completely different.
Yeah.
So change our mind.
I think that's valuable. It's like an addition to your existing discipline work. I think that's the point.
I think that in the beginning was difficult because you need to change your chip in the manner of think. But when you begin, it's very interesting because it's other manner to organize your ideas, and it's funny. I think this is a good exercise.
Good. Any last comments? Okay, so thanks very much, and thanks, Louise, for doing that. That's an important demonstration of a very, very straightforward, well, not straightforward, but a very tangible exercise in how TD can challenge people's opinions about things. What I'm going to do now is to finish off. What time is lunch at? What time is 1 o'clock? 12:30. Okay, so I just wanted to go through a couple of points on this idea of enterprise. So. I'm just aware that I'm the only thing standing between you and your lunch, so I'll make this as painless as possible. I teach on the MBA, Masters in Business Administration at Ulster University, which is an international approach to problem solving that managers or scientists or doctors or people do. So it's a very common qualification if you want to manage any sort of activity or organization. And the topics that I do are these. So it's creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, and strategy. And what I noticed about these words is that they are common in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So what I want to just briefly ask you to think about are, what do these words mean in terms of water? So what is creativity? What does it actually mean, creativity, in terms of the water challenge? What does innovation mean? What does entrepreneurship mean, and what does strategy mean? Because I spend about a day working with my MBA students trying to understand and have a common understanding of what these mean. So given that they're important for the Sustainable Development Goals, what do they mean in terms of our particular focus, which is water? So do you want to talk to the person beside you for a couple of minutes, and then we'll surface our assumptions about what these things actually mean? So do you want to talk together? So the question that I asked you is that in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, there are 4 words that are used repeatedly, and for people who are researching or attempting to solve these problems, it's important that we understand what they mean. So the 4 words are creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, and strategy. So what are those words in Portuguese? What is it? Okay. What's this one? Okay. What's this one? Oh, that's different. What's this one? Okay, so thank you for... Okay, so what do they mean then?
What do they mean?
Yeah.
Tricky.
So what does creativity mean? I'll pick on someone else. What does creativity mean?
The capacity to create a solution from something that you don't have, for example.
So something different from the present, something.
Better than the.
It's better than.
Better than you have.
Okay. Any other thoughts on what is creativity?
Thinking about things in different ways.
What's about thinking about things? Okay. Any other thoughts on what is creativity? Is that all? So creativity is about doing better things and thinking in different ways. Okay, I must write to these people. What about the word? What does the word innovation mean?
When you change the purpose of something, you have a product and you change the purpose of this product.
So change.
By adding something new to it.
So you add something new to something. So sorry, any other opinions? What is innovation? You find a problem, you come up with some solution. Okay, what about entrepreneurship? What does that word mean? Hello? It's what? Identify a gap.
And try to solve it.
And solve the gap or address the gap.
Exactly.
What is it? So trying to sort of fill the gap in some way. Okay. Any other thoughts on what is entrepreneurship? Any other thoughts? Flexibility. Rentability. Money. Money? Okay. So it's an idea. Okay, well, the answer, what is strategy then? So, a way of doing something, okay. Or a plan.
Self-development as well.
Okay, development. I'll give you an example. Years ago, I used to, before the fall of the Soviet Union, I worked in Bulgaria. And in Bulgaria, which was a communist country at the time, what do you think the word entrepreneur, what did they associate entrepreneurship with? No? If you were called an entrepreneur, what was that? What did that mean in Bulgaria? Is anybody here from Bulgaria? So, no, I know it's not the Soviet Union, but the Iron Curtain. So you have the Soviet Union and the Eastern European countries. So Bulgaria was within the orbit of that of communism. Okay, sorry about that. So what was an entrepreneur in Bulgaria in 1980s? A criminal. An entrepreneur was a criminal. So the point about that is that these words have changed their meaning over time. And what I noticed from one of the presentations yesterday, one of the presenters said that there are two important words. One of them is risk, and one of them is entrepreneurship. So these words have changed over time, and they're now becoming much more familiar in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and hence into water research. So there's no definitive answer to what these mean. I did my PhD in this, so I know there isn't any answer to it. But what I think is that they get down to some fundamental points, and one of them is that creativity is a thinking process that involves looking at alternative ways of understanding or perceiving or appreciating. So well, how is that relevant to water research? Creativity. Has anybody an example of creativity in water research? Exactly. So a brilliant example of creativity in water-based research is the 2018 UN report on nature-based solutions, which actually suggested that the way of thinking about water problems up to 2018 was wrong, that it was an old paradigm or way of seeing the world which was wrong, and they were suggesting a new paradigm or a new way of seeing water in the world and how we engage with that. So that's an example, a very recent example of creativity in the study and research of water, that all the things we thought about it before were wrong. An example of innovation in water. Luis mentioned one this morning, earlier on. An example of water innovation, what did he talk about? Water 4.0? Yeah, so Water 4.0 is a really important, slightly scary idea about how water is going to be managed and paid for in the future, which I'll talk about. Entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity. As academics and researchers and NGOs, our business is the pursuit of opportunity. That's what we do to get results and success. Strategy is how you generate value. It's not about it's about how you generate value. So these are generic things that the UN has put into the Sustainable Development Goals and hence into water research. And that's why it's important that we understand what they mean, because the meaning is contested. All these words, the meaning is contested. I'll give you, so the examples, creativity in water. This, if you haven't, how many people have read this report? 3 people in the class, right, so in the class, 3 people in the group have read the report. This is really important. I think you should read this because it changes everything, I think. And they say old approaches, water management, getting water goals, and ecosystem considered an unfortunate but necessary cost, actually increasing risk through unplanned and unmanaged impacts on water-related goals. So that old way of thinking is now problematic, that we all worked under. The new paradigm is that you need to do it in a sustainable way. So the fact of the matter is that things are paradigms or ways of seeing the water problem are actually changing over time. And that's an example of creativity. And again, if you're a researcher doing your science or your engineering, to do that and be ignorant of what's going on at a global level, you're missing a huge area of creativity, I would suggest. Any thoughts on that? So the paradigm is changing, people's perception of water is changing and how we deal with that. Innovation in water, if you should go on to this. Has anybody been on this side? German Water Partnership? Hands up. Okay, so you need to look at that because they suggest we're actually in a fourth industrial revolution. How does that apply to water? Interfacing of fourth revolution in water management. Interfacing of real and virtual water systems, real-time and forecasting models, distribution and connection, smart sensoring. Is that good? Or is that a real problem? I don't know. So we're in a fourth industrial revolution, and there's a fourth revolution in water management, and countries and businesses in the world are engaging with this as we speak. Trying to generate business value, operational value, and technical value. I'll give you an example of that. In Ireland, I have a property in Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland, and a number of years ago they tried to bring in water charges that we actually would pay for the water. and there was a massive refusal by citizens to pay for that. So much so the government actually then abandoned the idea of charging for people to have water in their properties. So the idea that you have to pay for water is prevalent in Germany and England. In the Republic of Ireland, you don't pay for your water. In Northern Ireland, you don't pay for it. So this is a huge issue, a fundamental issue. Do you pay for water, or should the state provide water for you out of general taxation? So that's the water revolution. We're in it right now. But so the work that people are doing in sensors will contribute to this stuff. Entrepreneurship and water. I looked at one example, which was Switzerland, and there's a whole group of organizations involved in pursuing opportunities and this is funded by the Swiss equivalent of the UK government's GCRF fund. And you have different organizations involved in this. These are small organizations, waterpreneurs, Antenna and so on, who are looking for opportunities for water in different parts of the world. And you can see what they do. It's R&D, training, incubation, acceleration of ideas, financing ideas, and impact measurement. So this is entrepreneurship, looking for opportunities. These are the members of this. This is one network in Switzerland. Innovation development, early stage incubation, interest-free loans, mentoring, access and market data. This is all to do with water and water development in an international field. Their activities, R&D, training, and so on, these are the organizations and this is what they do. Now, what strikes me when I looked at that was, from a business perspective, I see SafeWater as a competitor, in a sense, in an international marketplace. I know it might be insulting to some people in the group, but from a business perspective, SafeWater is a competitor, which is attracting funds. It's doing activities. It has to justify its existence to funders and shareholders and stakeholders. And a lot of other organizations are already doing this. They're doing it in Brazil and Mexico and Colombia as well. So entrepreneurship is happening, and we're in a marketplace where we would need to be very clear about what we're trying to do. So to finish off, I'll leave you with this thought. What aspects of enterprise, in other words, creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, and strategy, are relevant, or relevance, or particular relevance to your work as part of the SafeWater Consortium? I mean, is entrepreneurship of relevance? Are you producing a technique or a product that has the potential to be commercialized or can be used in social enterprise? What knowledge do you need? We have a very big consortium of nearly 70 people now, and so you can plug into people in that for advice and assistance. And what are the next steps for you to engage with enterprise? So I'll leave it at that, but are there any other questions about enterprise creativity, innovation in the water sector that's of relevance to you, or an example that you have that's appropriate? Anybody want to contribute?
I just wanted to briefly comment on the enterprise side of things related to SafeWater. So the project still have 2 years, just over 2 years to finish. But at this point, we are already thinking about ways to exploit the technology. So basically trying to leverage funding. But the point is that we need to think about the equitable partnerships, which is an important aspect to it. So for SafeWater specifically, we don't have that answer. We are looking for the answer whether we want to commercialize it in the normal route or if we are going to do like a social enterprise. Because the problem is that when you're sharing IP between 3-4 different countries, investors, they will be less inclined to put money basically into your technology. So as you are saying, that is we are competing against other technologies, and we need to find a way. So SafeWater is actually currently working and trying to think about that as well. So actually all our partners, we are working with Cantaro Azul, CTA, and University of São Paulo to try to understand what is best for everyone.
Okay, I should also say that the narrative and discourse that I use is business discourse, but many of my students work in charities or hospitals or NGOs, so the words that I use are equally valid for social enterprise, social entrepreneurship, social innovation. It's just the words are a convenient way of doing that, so it's not necessarily commercial, it's for social enterprise as well. Any other observations from our group about enterprise, creativity, innovation? Any other thoughts? Okay, so thanks very much for your attention. We're going to come back at what time? 20 minutes for lunch?
Sorry. For the lunch, we will return 2 p.m.
At 2 p.m. So we're here to talk and engage, but we'll be returning at 2 p.m.
Yes,
for the next section. And who's on next? Bill? Okay. So we look forward to our afternoon session of exciting and detail. Okay, thanks very much.